No, we're not back.
Not any better, I don't think.
My buddy's on Skype with his fucking parents. And
Is Heater watching porn?
Streaming a fucking Leafs game right now. And both of them think that those things are important, and they're fucking not. Because, the Leafs, who gives a shit about the Leafs? I don't know, I can't say that. Whatever. People care about the Leafs. No one cares about Scotty's parents, so fuck it.
Honestly, I missed all that until no one cares about Scott's parents.
You don't really listen to what I'm saying most of the time anyway.
Exactly.
I never do, especially when we're playing Dicey D20.
Exactly. So how is this different from any other time? Let's fucking do it.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Nat 20 Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, Josh, and today we'll be talking about quest building. Today we have...
Woo!
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Dude, I like quest building. I'm excited.
All right. So with me today, I have the Batman of our podcast.
Who's that?
The Batman?
Not the DM we deserve, but the one we need. Mr. Noah Prymak.
Oh, come on, man. Thank you very much. Great to be here.
And as you know, every Batman needs his Robin. So in front of me, we have our podcast Robin, sidekick, Here for the assistant, Mr. Shane Kirkham.
Woo, thanks. That's me.
Do you wear tight pants for Noah?
Oh, yeah, only for Noah. In his bat cave.
He wears no pants for me.
Oh, God, you adopted him. And we have a guest this week. She broke in like a cat burglar.
Call her Catwoman.
Our Catwoman.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks,
I
Noah.
got it.
God damn it.
Stole the joke.
Amber Schening.
I'm defined by my pussy.
God.
That's exactly what we like to hear.
I think I love you.
They said they wanted a more diverse cast, and we got another white woman. So, as stated before, we are doing quest building today. Find out some quick tips and tricks on how these DMs and future DMs. Actually, maybe we could do that. Amber, you want to introduce yourself? Just kind of why you're here, what you want to learn. Get you talking.
Yeah, I'm building a campaign right now. It's very vague, very in concept. So I'm here to learn and be the voice of the viewer.
Okay.
This is your first time building a campaign?
Yes.
Oh, God, this is perfect. She's a blank slate.
Good to know.
Yeah.
You can corrupt her all you want.
How long have you been playing Dungeons and Dragons?
I was trying to figure that out earlier with Josh, and I think it's about a year I've been a player. I've been in, I think, 5 or 6 games now, campaigns now. But yeah, about a year.
Okay, cool. So always a player, never DM, but looking to transform into the god that these people claim to be.
I'm not a god. I'm not a god. No kings are gods, only men.
Okay.
That's a BioShock reference for all you guys.
All right. Actually, that kind of leads into one of my questions. Start off, I'm going to post some questions to our DMs, see what their answers are. If Amber has any questions, feel free to chime in, pick their brains. You only have them for, I don't know, until the end of this podcast. They go to sleep after this podcast, and they don't wake up until the next one. So, you mentioned BioShock there, Noah.
I did.
Do you use a lot of video games and other pop culture? Give yourself quest ideas, or do you come up with them yourself?
When it comes to pop culture references, I think we all take certain themes and motifs from films, TV shows, books. When it comes to video games, I think I maybe gain more inspiration from those because that was just always the medium that I grew up with. In terms of what I actually take from them, though, I very rarely take like actual storyline. I kind of take the overarching theme or the motif from it. So like for BioShock, for example, I would run like a dystopian utopia type of situation, right? Like I'd take the overarching idea of BioShock and then apply that to maybe a campaign. Sure, yeah, I've probably done that in the past.
Okay. You're not just all homebrew, you kind of take ideas from here and there. I guess that is homebrew, my bad.
Yeah, to say that we don't get inspiration from, like, homebrew is exactly, yeah, it's brewed at home, right? Sure. But yeah, you take inspiration from things that mean something.
Is that what that means?
You take inspiration from things that mean something to you, right? Like, I mean, just if you run like a written storyline that Dungeons and Dragons puts out, which are awesome, like, you know, you're going to put your little tiny twists and spins on things. Everyone takes inspiration from some things. I mean, no one is just like completely, I've taken inspiration from nothing, because there's no new ideas per se, right? Everything's kind of something else in a different form.
What's the quote? It's like, great artists create their own work, or no, good artists create their own work. Great artists steal work and make it their own. Something like that.
Yeah, I'm a great fucking artist. So,
how about you, Shane? Do you take quest ideas from video games or movies or shows, anything like that, or music? I guess you could. Beyonce, maybe that's your thing. I don't know. Good Bard's Quest.
Yeah. Music I have taken some inspiration from.
Oh.
Like, there's this one band I like. It's called Wolf Alice. One of their songs is called Silk.
Can you sing it for us?
No, I can't.
Please sing it, Shane.
You don't want to get copyright strikes.
Oh, true.
Can't sing it.
Sing it, Robin.
Yeah, so I kind of like interpolate what kind of story it was telling to me. And then I put that into a couple of characters that I've made. It wasn't really a big story element, but it was kind of their backstory. And one of the characters wrote a journal, had like a diary. I used one of the lyrics as some of his poems that he put in there. So they're kind of like little Easter eggs, I guess. But
that's cool.
Yeah,
nice. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, I always wondered where ideas from quests came from, and it's kind of interesting to see it come from a song. I never suspected that anyway.
Yeah.
So
I've also taken stuff from video games as well. Not really any quest, like full quests or anything, but if a video game kind of does something unique and kind of different, I might try to put a D&D spin on that.
Okay. We were talking earlier about your campaign, Amber. You're kind of in the world building stage right now, which we talked about the last episode. So if you want some tips, you know, we could use another download. I'm not afraid to beg for downloads. So you're kind of looking for quest ideas now. We were talking about what your main quest would be. Mm-hmm. Maybe we could get you to kind of talk about your world right now, and maybe we can, as I ask the questions, we can build off that and work with your quest line to or your story to build maybe some quests for you.
Yeah. So I've started off with the concept that there's 9 planets. Instead of like having a material plane or in a Feywild and all the different planes, there's a god that kind of owns each planet. Each planet is run really differently. So there's like the planet of life and peace, and there's the planet of war and destruction. So obviously that one's a little bit more rough around
chaotic,
the edges. Yeah, that's basically where I'm at for the world building right now. I know for quest building, I guess that's one thing that I'm here to learn about, is how you guys kind of get started with your quests. Is a really good question, because I know for me, I'm really visual, so I go and I find artwork that I like of characters, and I can try and kind of build quests around characters that look cool, and that's how. Where do
you get your art from? Like Google Images or
Pinterest?
Pinterest? Okay, that's Noah's favorite.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with pinning.
No.
The best part is when you wake up in the morning and it says, "Hey, we've found 28 more images that you're gonna love," and you're like, "Yeah."
Yeah, Noah, you should add her to your and Justin's Pinterest page.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. It's pretty
sorry.
It's pretty exclusive right now. We actually we post a lot of pretty controversial stuff on there.
Okay, that's cool. That sounds like an interesting world anyway, or worlds, I guess I should say. Yeah, so as we go along, if we can, we'll try and relate back to your world and try and maybe build something. Maybe a quest line, or maybe an idea for a quest line.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, so my next question is, I'll start with Shane here. So do you usually focus on one big main quest, or do you focus on a lot of side quests, or do you mix them? How do you like to do it? Or do you build the side quests as they come?
Well, there's Normally the one big main overarching goal that I kind of present to my players, and hopefully they make it. And then depending on the kind of characters that they create, I'll give each of them a side quest or just some kind of main quest that they can complete, and then use that experience, the loot they get, whatever the allies maybe they create along the way, to kind of bring to the big overarching main quest. So my campaign, there's a big dictator that they're trying to overthrow. So each player character has a quest where they assemble some part of an army, basically. I have one guy who's trying to get funding for their army. I have another one who's trying to get in with the Thieves Guild to get some, secret ins to the castle or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So each of their side quests kind of builds into the main quest, and they're each contributing in a different way, kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's usually how I want to lay my campaigns out.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Because I know, well, I'll let Noah speak more on this, because I know the way he plays is he usually has a main quest, and then there are chances to build your character with side quests. I'll let you talk about it, Noah. Do you want to go into more detail how you build your quests, your side quests, and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't typically... Look, I make a big storyline that I think everyone can contribute to. And within that storyline, it's not so much side quests, but every character can contribute in different ways. So not every encounter is going to be super bard friendly or super monk friendly or super druid friendly. But, certain players are going to shine at certain times, and that's just how it's going to go. But then when it comes to what the individuals bring to the table, it's more so their ability to work together. Like, a lot of my scenarios are based on, driving them apart. There can be like forks in the road, but, a lot of the times, at least the players that I'm with now, most of the time, they're pretty smart. They realize that they can't really survive on their own. So what ends up happening is together time is main quest time, and they're looking to complete an objective or save the world or do something that they find valuable with their time. In their downtime, that's where the real character progression comes, and I've absolutely had a blast with things like prestige classes, which Unearthed Arcana went into in 5e, which I was super excited to see. Kind of had toyed around with those ideas before Unearthed Arcana, just because I really liked it from previous versions of D&D. But downtime is just really the time where a player can, and I mean, you guys are going to see this in the Dicey D20, but it's a time where a player can really explore who they are, kind of build on their personality and on their abilities. And I find it's a great time to integrate really personalized quest lines. So, for example, I had a druid who wanted to get into elemental shifting a lot more. So he went on a quest to find the druids of Aya, or something along those lines. Gaia? Maybe it's Gaia. I don't know.
Okay.
And
Gaia?
So those,
I think it's Gaia, probably.
Well, maybe. These druids, there's four of them, and each one is, kind of specific to an element. And so they need a fifth druid or guardian, and it's the druid of the moon, which is what, this character was. He was a shapeshifter. So, he helps them take care of one of their sisters who was like a blighted druid and who was kind of doing some naughty shit. And then, in doing so, he gains a bunch of specific skills. So, yeah, that's kind of how my quest lines are built. I think downtime's a great time for character development. Characters can develop in the main quest line, but a lot of the times the main quest line's like, I ripped that guy's dick off and I wear it as a necklace. So it's like there's not real progression there,
Okay. If we move back to Amber's quest line, Amber, do you have any ideas for a main quest line, or have you even thought that far ahead yet?
So, yeah, I was thinking for kind of an overarching, as Shane put it, quest line. As an overarching quest line, I was thinking there would be basically the god of war and destruction trying to take over more planets. And as he did that, it would be this illness that kind of takes over. I was hoping that, they kind of partner with the god of life, or they have the potential to partner with the god of life to destroy that evil, or maybe they go with another god, or maybe they want to take that side and they end up ruling all the planets.
Ooh,
but kind of the goal is
play
to
the bad guys.
see where that goes. And I kind of have this illness done up where it's like a plague that goes out and infects a whole bunch of people. And that's kind of the overarching campaign storyline.
Okay, that's kind of cool.
That's a good
I don't know if
starting
you guys have
point.
any
That's a
thoughts
good
or-
jump off point for sure. Like, I mean, you've got the right idea. You're starting with, I mean, for you it's wartime, right? Which is a really good overarching quest line. But I don't know, what I do is like my first idea is never the full idea. Like jump off from there and make it a little bit more complex. So, you know, is it the wartime faction that's making, it's like it's the planet of war that's making the problems, right? But maybe it's not the planet of war that's behind it. So like, you know, maybe it's the planet of greed or it's the planet of wealth that's like captured their god, or maybe they're just like putting false prophets in there and they're stirring things up for their own gain, right? So the whole time your players are like, fuck these war fucks, they're trying to kill us, you know? And then the whole time...
Or they're like, let's work for these war fucks.
Yeah, and you know what? There's nothing better than a twist, right? You don't want it to be such a twisty journey that they don't know what the fuck's going on. But if you are able to throw in a subtle twist in the story, so... I don't know, if you guys ever are looking for a cool creative writing wheel, Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland, the guys from Rick and Morty, put out this 8-point process for writing a story. And I'm going to butcher the fuck out of it here, but essentially like your characters start in a state of comfort. They realize that they want something. They have to get out of their comfort to go get it. Once they've gone out of their comfort, they realize, hey, this isn't so bad. And if you're going to twist the plot line, I think it's at that point that you twist it. And then they have to adjust, right? So, you know, once they're fine with the fact that it's the wartime faction, once they've gotten far enough in that quest line, you can be like, psych, it was actually the peace-loving fucks that just wanted the land. But they didn't want to do it themselves because they don't want to get their hands dirty because they're pacifists. And then it's like, boom.
So you usually recommend like 1, maximum 2 major twists in a story, and then any more than that, your characters are kind of like, okay, well, who are we fighting for? And they kind of lose their purpose of the fight. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I'm saying that it complicates things when you twist shit too much, you know? It's like a nipple during foreplay. Okay. A little tiny twist, yummy, okay? More than that, it's in the nurple zone, my friend, and that's not good for anyone.
Okay, I'm learning sex tips as well as Dungeons and Dragons tips.
This is your one-stop shop, this podcast.
Yeah, no, I'm just also saying like you can oversimplify a story.
Yeah.
And with something that's so rigid in motifs, like planets that are based on emotions or actions, then it'd be really easy for that to just be a pretty cut and dried storyline. And I'm just saying adding a little bit of complexity can really breathe some reality into it.
Okay. It's kind of cool. Do you just want to hit them? You're like, no, I don't. I hate criticism.
No, I think that makes sense. The only question that I had with everyone talking that kind of popped into my head was how long your smaller quests go for. Like how many sessions? I think on average a session's 3 to 4 hours.
Okay.
And how long do you make those quests before you either don't think it's worth it or think it's too extravagant, or maybe your players don't like it?
I'll let you take that one, Shane.
Yeah, it depends.
Because there's varying levels of side quests, right? Probably. I would assume as a player, there's like quest lines that are like a branch off of the story, and then there's sometimes it's just like, oh, the baker needs water or something like that, so you go grab him water or something, right? Like,
yeah, there's different levels. Like if you got a little quest for a player, it's like kind of tailored to them. Maybe a full session would probably be a good length of time to play with. Smaller things for like just NPC characters, you know, they don't have to take up too much time. It really depends on
the quest.
On the quest and how kind of important it is to the story. Yeah,
I mean, it also depends on your players, right? Because I mean, as a player, I know there's been some quest lines where I fucking take it off the rails, and all of a sudden that's our whole session, right? Because I've done something stupid or done something that wasn't supposed to happen. And
I mean, a side quest, it depends on how major of a plot line part it is. If a side quest relates to the plot line, it can be as long as you want. If it's gonna for example, my players are playing a wartime as well with hobgoblins. The idea being that, you know, there's the elves, the dwarves, and the men, and each one has a specific number of quests for it. So like there are bugbears raining down in the north above the dwarves. And then there are orcs that are infringing on the elves' forest. And so they had an option for them to do any of these things to help the wartime, but which one they chose and at what point determined which people survived better or worse and how well they did overall in the storyline. So, like, for example, if they left the dwarves too long, the dwarves wouldn't really be a formidable force in the final battle that's about to take place, right? If, you know, they didn't help Elion, or for example, you know, in front of the human city, there's a bunch of siege engines being built, but, you know, they don't want to take those out too early because they'll just rebuild them before the war. So they kind of had to think strategically, and everything kind of had a cause and effect. So I would just say if it's major to the storyline, as long as you want. If it's like a small, like my daughter's run off and she's with this farm boy in a forest, it's like
scandalous.
I don't know, like a session, maybe half a session, right? You kind of have to determine how much of your time you want to dedicate to it and how useful it is for your players. If they like it and they might love that farm boy and girl story, let them run with it. Like, fuck, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by that farm boy. Go on.
His name is Gabe.
Oh.
His name is Gabe, and her name is Chelsea.
Oh.
Chelsea and Gabe.
I thought you were going to say Katniss.
No.
Is that guy Gabe?
No,
anyway,
no.
We're getting off the track. As a player, if I'm interested in a side quest and it ends too early, I'm like, fuck. Like, I really like that. Like, I was doing some cool stuff with that. And then, well, because at that point, it's almost railroading, right? You're kind of railroading your players to get back to the main quest. So do you kind of let them play it out first and then get to the point where
always
they're
give them
ready?
the option to walk away.
Okay.
Like, at any point in any quest line, they should be able to walk away. And I mean, there's going to be consequences, but at no point should you be like, no, you have nowhere else to go. You have to do this, right? If they're not game for it, just let them fucking walk. And then they still feel like they have freedom of choice.
Okay.
Which they do.
All right. So that kind of leads into one of my next questions. It's how much leash or leeway do you give to your players to solve a quest? Is there like, because I know some DMs like to do it, this is the one way to solve the quest. If you do something else, it kind of fucks the quest up, and then you just have to go another way or do another quest or something like that. So how do you guys approach that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to solve different problems and different quests. Even just speaking on the campaign I was just talking about, right? They have an infinite number of choices. I mean, they could go help the elves, they can help the humans, they can go deal with the sand people in the south. They had a bunch of stuff going on, like, you know, the King of Elion wanted a set of stone gauntlets, which had the power of the ancients. The Elven King wants some jewels back from a dwarven kingdom. The dwarves have this dragon in the north that's fucking up some mining operations up there, so they're pissed about that. They had, like, legitimately 15 different things they could have done, right? It's just, and they were told at the beginning, because they're high-level players, that the order in which they do them affects the long-term success. And so that's ultimate freedom right there. I mean, they had a choice to A, not partake in any of it, or B, partake in whatever they wanted at whatever time in whatever order they saw fit to problem solve, right?
Okay.
So, you know, they said, okay, well, the elves are probably fine for now. We're going to go deal with the dwarves. So they dealt with the dwarves, and they were like, shit, we left the elves too long, and they fucking ran all the way to the fucking elves, right? There can be specific instances where, yeah, there's only one way to solve a puzzle, but, you know, there's many ways to solve a quest line.
Shane, how much leeway do you give your players? And actually, this will be good because I think Amber is one of your players, so she can confirm or deny this.
Yeah, it's true. My quests, like, I usually have it planned out how I would think it was gonna end or how they would solve it. But if the characters come up with a creative way or something they really want to try, I'll usually run with it and let them attempt it. Depending on how, like, the personalities of the characters they're with, it might work or they might not. If they want to try intimidating this gnome who's just like a coward, it'd be pretty easy for them to do.
Unless they're also a coward.
Yeah, unless
coward fight.
Unless
they run the other way, both of them.
Unless they're not very intimidating, they're just a little ball of fuzz or something.
But, you know, like, there's I mean, for me at least, I write probably 3 or 4 contingencies for what might happen, right? So there's the most likely scenario, but I find that they rarely pick that one off the top, and they'll try something a little bit more obscure. So in my writing, I've actually learned to, over the years, just write different different outcomes for quests or for sessions or for individual encounters. Like, you have to be ready for your players to throw you curveballs, and they rarely go with the choice that you think they'll go with. So, you can, off the top that, you can improvise it. But one of the best things you can do is like say, okay, if I was like, knowing your players is a good thing, but even just within your own self, just being like, okay, you know what, there's, I want them to do this, but there's actually probably like 4 or 5 different things they could do. And then having stuff written for those 5 possibilities. They don't have to be fleshed out to the same extent as the main idea, but, having some basis to go off of is important.
Okay, so when you do that kind of contingency plan where there's different ways, do you kind of do it, I don't know, have you guys ever played the Telltale games like Walking Dead? Yeah. So you make a choice in those games, but ultimately it still comes back to the same outcome. Do you do that, or do you have different outcomes as well?
No, it's always different outcomes. I mean, the thing about D&D is that, okay, if it was the same outcome, it'd be railroading. And the cool thing about D&D is you're not limited in the same way that like Telltale or Walking Dead is, right? You can, if they make a pretty grand scale change of plans or they go about a quest a different way, I mean, there's consequences and reactions for everything, right? So most of the time, something's going to change, right? I was running a quest where they were dealing with some sea elves, doing kind of like a Hunger Games meets Olympics type gameplay, and the king asked them to do a quest for him. And, if they had a choice between helping one of the lower elves in the city or helping the king. It was the same quest line, but from a different vantage point. But they're not going to get the money from the king if they don't help him, right? Mm-hmm. And they're not going to do, quote unquote, what they saw as the morally right thing by helping the younger, less prestigious elf, right? So, there's always different outcomes for different decisions. That's the beauty of D&D.
How about you, Shane? Do you do the one outcome, or do you vary it a little bit?
Try to vary it. I plan out if they get the quest done, obviously they'll get the rewards and, it'll help them. But there could be, one of my quests, I had some couple players, they were investigating this inn that was rumored to be haunted.
Okay.
They go in, they look around and like, oh yeah, people have died here, they've gone missing. We're going to spend the night and see if we can find the ghost and we'll attack it or whatever, right?
Yep.
So they spend the night and the ghost shows up and they end up fighting it and defeating it. Hey, we got rid of the ghost, so let's go to this guy and collect our reward. But what really was happening was there was a gnome illusionist who was just casting this to try and spread all these rumors about it being haunted. He wants to drive business to and down the street.
Okay.
So there's different outcomes. They could finish the quest early and not really complete it. They could figure out that was going on. They even did something I didn't plan at the end of it. They found out what was going on. They ended up working with the gnome illusionist. He was a spy for the inn down the street.
Okay.
So they ended up working with him to go to the other inn and start making that place seem haunted. But like when they got there, they started talking to the owner and ended up getting really good intimidation rolls. So they were able to like bully their way in there and finish the quest that way. Depends on how they react to different things. You should always plan out a couple things where, it might end here. So this is what would happen at this point.
Yeah. Like kind of like what Noah said, you always give them an out to get out of the quest whenever they want to. So if they want to finish it there, they can. But
yeah. But then there should be like the repercussions as well.
Yeah.
Of finishing the quest early or not.
Yeah, so, I mean, for, like, Amber's questline, for example, I mean, you can write out this whole wartime story all you want, but to a certain extent, if your players decide that they don't want anything to fucking do with that, you can't just be like, there's nothing else happening in these 9 planets that I've created, it's just the war, right? So you have to have...
only war.
Yeah, there's only war. There's war everywhere. What about the peaceful planet? War there too. War everywhere that you can see.
Death is...
Yeah, you need to have complexity to the world, and there has to be other stuff going on. That's kind of what's interesting about D&D is you have to create a living, breathing world that has a lot of different options for quest lines.
Because there could be like... sorry to interrupt you, Noah, but there, like for years, they could be like there could be a greed planet or something where they are selling arms to the war planet, and maybe they work for them as like traders or something like that. like traders, not traitors. You know what I mean? Like they're like Han Solo or something. They're like taking goods back and forth.
Well, or I mean, you have someone hire them as armed guards, right? Armed escort for one of the arms shipments, and then they're actually a part of the trade. They get to see some of the arms get used, and they're like, "Holy shit!" Like that's what happens when we make a bunch of money and people just like get killed, right? And you might actually see like them change their tune, or you might see them fall headfirst into becoming arms dealers. But either one could happen, right?
Yeah. I do have a question for you, Emmer, though. Are you going to allow them to start on different planets?
Yeah, they could definitely start on different planets. I don't know how I would get them together yet, but I would hope that they could start on different planets.
Well, if you think about it, there's 9 alignments, right? 9 different alignment choices.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have, based on their alignment, which planet they are on.
Yeah,
you could do that. True. I don't know how you'd get them together. That's a whole other problem, but...
Well, creating an organic encounter like that would be pretty challenging, given I don't know how easy space travel is. I'm assuming pretty easy, but yeah, you got to start small. So even though you've created this really big, awesome universe, these 9 planets to work in, you got to realize that they're starting off as level 1s, right? They're literally unknowns to the world. No one knows their name. They haven't accomplished anything really cool unless they're a folk hero. So you got to start them off at a point where they can build their reputation, and maybe they meet on like a transport vessel, right? Or maybe they meet when one guy his village is attacked, and one of the guys there is actually a dude who is a soldier or something like that. Like you kind of have to work with your players, but an organic encounter is always the best way to start off. You have to understand that your first episode or your first session is probably just going to be fucking around, right?
Always is.
Yeah. You got to give them an option to like kill an innkeeper, bury the body. They need a whole, GTA 5 experience for their first 3 hours of gameplay.
How much do you think of your players when you're building a quest? And us from like, we've been friends forever, Noah, and so it was probably easier for you to build quests for us. But say you're building a quest for people you don't really know. How do you go about that building for them?
I always just build what I think would be cool as shit to play, and then I go from there. Okay. But if you don't know your players and you're building, then you're pretty much looking at, you gotta pick a theme that you think people can relate to, right? Or it can be challenging for sure for players you don't know, but all I can say for that is, maybe there's nothing wrong with sitting down with everyone who's about to play and saying like, hey, so what are you guys kind of like into? Because, if you make this like horror and gore campaign and everyone's like, I kind of just wanted to like fuck some shit up, then that's going to be 2 very different vibes. And there's nothing wrong with like going to your players and being like, hey, what are you guys into? Because like every time that we complete a season or a campaign, I look at my players and I go, what are you guys interested in doing next?
He goes, I'm so disappointed in you guys. Why did you do that?
Yeah. Followed by, what can I do to make it so that you'll do better, right?
And the answer is always nothing. We'll always fuck up.
Yeah, but ask them what they're into, because that, it's like fucking sex. We're gonna go back to the twisting of the nipples. You know what I mean? If you never ask your partner what the fuck they're into, then you'll never know that you're doing it wrong, right? They could just be nice and tell you that you're doing fine. But the sex is going to be way better if you just talk about it and say, you know what, I actually don't like it when you twist my nipple. And you're like, fuck, I've been twisting nipples for years. Like, you gotta figure your shit out.
Like, I love being my nipple being twisted. Thought everyone
right?
did.
It's like, I thought horror and gore was sweet. You don't like that? No. I just wanted to like, throw some kittens off a bridge or something, but you made me fight a werewolf pack that ripped my head off. Like, shit.
That's a little bit of gore. If your players are killing kittens in game, I think you have to talk to them about something about their life.
No, they're just chaotic neutral, man. Spread some peanut butter on that shit, swallow it whole. It's all good. We've all had chaotic
that's
neutral.
That's what I'm wondering too, because like, do you guys ever limit your characters during a quest? Do you guys ever say, "Look, I do not have an answer for what you're doing. You're not allowed to do that"?
Oh, Noah, all the time. During the Dicey D20 podcast, whenever I say something stupid or I have an idea, he's always like, is that really what you want to do? Or look, I don't want to stop you, but
that's kind of my go-to line is like, look, I'm your friend, I'm your DM, I can never tell you not to do something, but I highly suggest you don't do, like, you know what I mean? Like, I've had players legit, like, walk into, like, the king's chambers and just strip naked and be like, what, you want to fucking start something? And it's like, dude, as your friend, I'm suggesting you don't do that, right? But I don't ever say no, you know what I mean? I ridicule, and that kind of sets the tone, but...
I don't know how many times I like, you say that to me, and I just go, I'm doing it anyway, like, it's happening, and you're just like, all right, let's see where this goes.
Yeah, no, you never want to limit. You always want to, you can always, as a friend, suggest things, but you never want to say, no, you can't, because that's not what D&D's about. D&D's like, oh, you want to learn about that cryptic message that was in the bathroom? Sure, you can seduce the barmaid and talk about it over pillow talk. Like, I don't know, fuck, like, do whatever you want, right? Like,
I don't know, Shane, do you have any, do you just railroad your players hard and just keep them on the straight and narrow?
Yeah, pretty much. Just like keep shoveling coal. I think that, like, overall, we're making the stories for our characters, and we're trying to play for them, basically, give them this experience. I think it's pretty important. Like, there's an improv rule called, like, yes and you always just agree with what they say, and then you keep building off of that. And I think that's something that you can also use in D&D.
Mm-hmm.
So saying, okay, yeah, we'll do that, and then trying to build off of that for them. You're starting to make the story for them, like, on the spot.
Yep.
You're able to build it.
You
get instant feedback from them.
You're really good at that too, with even just simple things in character development. We had one mission where we went into this cave and there were these owl bears, and one of our characters tried to make friends with them and went up to the little, like, puppy one.
Yeah, there was like 2 cub owl bears and a mama owl bear.
Yeah, and she was like, do you want to go listen to music and hang out? And Shane took right advantage of that and went, I don't know what music is. And then, of course, we start killing the owl bears. And Shane's voicing this, like, Rubber Tuck or whatever its name was.
Yeah, I came up with the names on the spot, and they became Rub and Tom.
Yeah, everyone really liked that one.
Yeah.
And there's Shane screaming, I don't like music, as he watches his brother die. It was a really good improv moment.
That's funny.
Yeah, they were trying to, like, clear out this den, but they found a couple cubs. Like, oh, we'll befriend them and take them along our way. We had a druid, and they're like, I'm going to get a new pet.
As all druids think.
Yeah. So it could have happened that they recruited them, but because they said, oh, we're going to teach you music, and then our, like, chaotic evil rogue started attacking the mama bear and the other bears. So, like, oh, this music's terrible. I never want to do this again.
I didn't know this is what music was.
So if they were able to, like, switch it around and end up getting one of the bears to actually stay alive and follow them, not be too freaked out by them, that bear would have hated music for the rest of its life, you know? So there's different things like that you got to kind of just go with when they mention things like that. My players haven't really done anything outrageous that I thought would ruin the story or go too far off. So I guess I've been kind of lucky there.
I should come play your campaign.
Man, that's all my players do.
Yeah. Well, Sab's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I had this recent campaign there. They just came off the tail end of it, where there was this red warlock who's essentially been alive for, like, millennia, and he offers them all. He's a demon warlock, so he offers them all really, really cool magical items in exchange for very, very important things. So he had one of them kill his girlfriend. He had another one give up his child.
Jesus.
He had another one just give him an unconditional favor, and then he had another one give up his god as a cleric. And so, like,
holy shit,
your players can do whatever they want, you know what I mean, and give them the choices, right? Like in Josh's very first campaign that he ever played with me as the DM, he made a pretty huge decision to join Lolth's armies in in the demon web,
Yep.
and the more choices you give them, the more they want to play, guaranteed. If they feel like they have no say, it's garbage.
And speaking as a player's perspective, in our first playthrough, I betrayed my friend. I put that in air quotes. I started working for the bad guy, basically. And the whole time, me personally, I was like, I was always thinking about it. Like when I wasn't playing the game, I was like, fuck, did I make the right choice? Did I do this? And it really engaged me, to say the least. Like, you never just said no, I couldn't go, and then I'd be like, I'd kind of be pissed because I thought of this whole plan and I wanted to execute on it, where I would betray the bad guys kind of thing. Later on, I had this whole con, and as a player, it was really engaging to have that option to go do what I wanted.
Yeah, sometimes I have the opposite experience where, I'm presented with an option, and then when I take advantage of that option, I end up killing half the party. So I'm really not down for when that happens. Gotta make sure I don't do that.
Yeah,
that's rough.
Yeah, I'm good at that.
Yeah, well, a skill's a skill. Take advantage of whatever skill you have. Play a butcher character where you are the bad guy. You just kill everyone anyway.
I'll be the DM and the players of my own game.
Okay, so going into our last question here before we go into stories, I kind of want to just get what's a big no-no for DMs, because there's a lot of them, but I just kind of want to get a couple big ones that you guys can think of off the top. If you think of one as a player or as a DM yourself, that's fine. So Noah, do you want to go into something you would never do as a DM?
Yeah, sure. I guess, railroading is one that we oftentimes talk about, so I won't spend too much time on railroading. Give your players choices. It's pretty much as simple as that.
Yep.
Don't, and this is kind of another big one, I guess, is when you're creating your storyline, don't become too attached to it. If they want something different, if they choose not to partake in it, don't be offended. Just buck up, move on.
Yep.
Not every single idea you're going to have is going to be a super big hit, especially when you start out. I don't know. Don't think too big. You know what I mean? Think small. At least your first session with new players who've never played D&D, and even some veteran players, is going to be chaos. I had a player who was pretty experienced eating another player's mice. You know what I mean? And that lasted for 3 sessions before we even got into anything serious. Be prepared for some craziness. Don't feel this pressure to make this Harry Potter-esque world. As you play more, your worlds are going to get super interesting and complex, and there's going to be factions and interrelation between people, and it's all going to make sense. And don't question yourself, man. Whatever you feel like is going to be cool, whatever you can find mechanics for, whatever interests you is going to interest your players. So, I guess the biggest thing is just don't be discouraged if, your first session you felt like you were fumbling with it, right? Because we were all there. My first session, I fumbled with it. You're there and you're having a hard time pulling the names out of a hat, and and who's this NPC? Shit, well, I didn't make a name for that NPC. It's it's all good, man. Next time you're going to have a pre-made list of 10 random NPC names. You know what I mean? And you're going to have all the stuff that you need. So as you go, you grow, and don't be discouraged. Just if you enjoy it, do it.
Okay. That was a lot of no-nos and yeses, if you call them that.
Yeah, I guess so.
I like them.
I don't know. Player freedom is important, but more so than that is just, your storyline definitely has to be able to adapt. And, if they choose to do something very different than what you pictured, it's okay. And realize that that's probably going to change the outcome of the story. For Amber's questline, for example, if they choose to help the wartime faction, the wartime faction should, have a chance of winning. If, and if they don't help the wartime faction, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to lose, but you have to kind of realize that your players, especially at higher levels, are going to have the ability to shape and impact the world, right? If my players right now chose to help the hobgoblins, those hobgoblins would win. 100%. 100% they would win. My one buddy has Glacial Meteor Storm as a spell. Okay, he can bring down 40-foot radius, 4 of them, these huge meteors of ice, and murder everything in an area for 36 d6 damage.
Holy shit.
He can change the entire tide of a war, right? So I think with quest building, it comes back to, when you're starting out, make it simple. If it, seems a little too simple, throw in a twist. Throw in the purple nurple. But don't twist it too hard. and just come up with something that you find interesting.
All right. Thank you, Noah. What about you, Shane?
I kind of have this problem with like a campaign I'm playing in right now, and it annoys me. It's most important to remember that the player characters are the heroes of the story. So you should never really let them become
the
sidekick or just spectators, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good one, actually. As a player, I hate that when I do all this stuff and someone else gets credit for it, or like you're basically not the hero. Which, I mean, your first few levels, you're not going to be the main hero.
Sure,
you're going to be the underdog, right? But eventually get to that hero status, right?
Yeah, it's not really fun just watching events unfold around you, and you can't really influence them too much, and you don't ever feel like, this was what I did this session. I was able to get this done.
Well, I mean, the best part of D&D is later on telling people, hey, I did this in this quest line and it was super cool. And whereas if you go and you can't be like, yeah, my DM showed me this this character do this cool thing. Like that's not the same, right? How about you, Amber? Any gripes as a player?
So I know I played in a Saturday night game, and the DM just took no one's backstory and like didn't read it, didn't
just
care about it.
Threw it under the rug.
Yeah.
Like you're all blank slates.
Yeah. So I know for me it's like, don't ignore your players, kind of similar to what Shane said. Make sure that they're a primary person in the storyline, and make sure that, you know, if they're putting work into their character and created a really good backstory, they are actually using that as well. Because it sucks when, I know as a player, I put a lot of work into my backstories and I try and make it really cool and in depth and can't wait to see what the DM does with it. No. And if they don't end up doing anything, then...
Well, I mean, what better way to get your players engaged in their own character, right?
Yeah.
I mean, once you're engaged with your character and you feel like that character is part of you, like that's the best, right? Like then the highs are high and the lows are low, right? Like if you die with that character, it's like you're just like heartbroken and upset, and whereas if it's just like it's some blank slate that your DM doesn't care about, then it's hard to get attached to that, right?
I'm not playing an NPC, I'm playing my character.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that's a good one. I like that one a lot.
You can kind of like tie that a little bit back into the I forget what question it was, but we were talking about playing with new characters, playing with new players that you haven't played with before.
Yep.
Having them, like Noah suggested, just asking them what they like, just kind of even what they want to get out of D&D, but having them write their backstories and then reading them, there might be hints of what they want to happen with their characters. For example, the rogue I'm playing with, the first line that he started up with was he woke up shipwreck with tons of tattoos and scars and no memory of what happened.
He's like a Wolverine.
Yeah, pretty similar. And then he started stealing from the streets and eventually climbed like this gang ladder and got pretty high into a gang. But that gives you an opportunity to write his backstory, I guess, how he got to where he started writing. And and that gives you maybe a little quest to actually give him the chance to find out where he came from and what those scars and tattoos might be.
For sure. That's a good point, looking to their character's backstory and using it as a possible side quest later. I think a big no-no for me, I hate this. Okay, so I don't know if you guys have ever had this. I know you two have, but a DM say, no, we're restarting this campaign because you guys have fucked it up so much.
Fuck
that is the worst. Because you as a player and you as your group have made this conscious decision, or even accidentally have fucked up the quest. That's fine, right? There should always be another way to get back into the quest.
Yeah.
Or not, like just fucking grow up. Like if they really fucked it up royally, then now continue writing it as though, it's messed up. You know what I mean? If their whole job was to protect the princess from an army of trolls and the princess dies, don't restart the fucking quest. Just be like, shit, they failed. But now what's the world like without this princess, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
write up some consequences. Write up some consequences and some outcomes to it, because there's nothing more defeating as a player than having your choices and decisions and outcome, like the things you have done, mean absolutely nothing when it gets reset. I get it if you're playing Skyrim and you save before you go in and murder a bunch of people, but when you're in the game and you're interrogating someone and you cut his head off without asking the right questions, that's your choice. You cut the head off. That should be your decision to live with, whether your group hates you or not. Yeah.
And I mean, on top of that, like, this kind of flows with that, is like, realize that not all your players are good guys. You know what I mean? Some of them are fucking bad dudes. Some of them are indifferent to the problem. Some of them really care, and some of them are just like there for the ride and to have fun. Like, writing a quest line with the whole knight in shining armor motif is all well and good if you have a group of paladins who are lawful good. But like, if you don't have a group of all paladins that are lawful good, then like, understand that some of your players are going to do some pretty fucking dickish things. Like, you know, everyone's going to be talking to the king. One of them's going to have his hand in the fucking cookie jar, right? Like, stealing some shit. And it's like, you got to be fine with that.
Yeah.
And the consequences are the consequences, but like, people are living and breathing. People make good and bad decisions and do good and bad things, quote unquote. And so do players, right?
Yeah. And everyone makes mistakes in real life, so you should be able to make the mistakes in the game as well, right?
Yeah.
And
for sure.
And you can take it a funny route. You can make it a funny outcome. Like, whatever, just do whatever you want, but make it so that your players feel the effects of their decisions and not feel like their decisions are pointless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the idea of no matter what the decision is, that they can keep going too. Because I feel like sometimes I make a decision in the campaign that Josh is referring to. And like I said earlier, I just end up killing a bunch of party members. And in my game that I play those nights, I'm known in my party to party wipe all the time.
Yeah.
But I feel like part of that is because I make decisions that aren't what the DM expects. He even said right after I killed everyone, wow, that is not how I expected that to go. And it's like, well, don't make it go that way then. Like, you're the one narrating this.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're writing a storyline, if your storyline hinges on one dude whose head can't be cut off surviving, then you gotta dig deeper and put your feelers out in some other areas too, man. Like, if your quest line hinges on something so fragile, you cannot be upset if it falters, right? Because like, you know, there's gotta be more depth to it than that. If this one dude that you're interrogating is the only one who's got the information you need, and the quest line cannot possibly go forward without him, then that's a recipe for fucking failure, my friend. Because like, there's a lot that can go wrong with that, right?
Yeah.
Like, my quest lines are, you know, they've got so many different angles to go about it. They don't need to talk to one dude in one place at one time to get that shit started. It's all around them. You know what I mean? Like,
there's billboards and all that stuff.
Go this way for Werewolf Clan.
If your players are dumb, just write it out for them. All over the sand and trees, it says this is the way to the quest now. No. Yeah, so that's kind of my a big gripe for me. Another gripe you've kind of talked about, Amber, is player killing. I think should be an event. Like, it should resonate with people. It shouldn't be like an every other session kind of thing. It should be, this is a fucked up, like, you feel that shit, right? Like, if a player dies, you feel it. You're like, fuck, that sucks. I feel bad for whoever it is, like, whoever's player dies. And like, the whole group feels the loss, and that player feels the loss. And
dude, I mean, if players die too often, you lose. It's like Dark Souls. You become desensitized to the loss. You know what I mean? You're just like, I expected to die tonight 4 times. You know, it's like, if you have to be very careful with the concept of, you know, a player's mortality in their life, especially at early levels. They can die really easily. But a really important part of quest building is that it's fluid, right? I mean, if you build a quest and that night you're rolling hot and they're rolling cold, you got to ease off, man. Because like, if you kill someone every session or I know a DM who legitimately, his ratio is like 2 player characters die every night.
Holy shit.
And they don't enjoy it and they hate it. And and one of my buddies was like, dude, you DM'd me for so long. I didn't realize how shitty it would be out there in the real world, man. And I felt bad for him. But like, if I've had players who have died once in 17 levels, like died, not just went down, but like died.
Yeah.
Completely died. And like that brought tears to the most, strong and manly man I've ever met. Like he had moisture in his eyes, and it's the closest I've ever seen to him crying, and it meant something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
when
that's what it should be, right?
Sweetnuts died. Yeah, it shouldn't be an every game thing.
Yeah, that sounds like the kind of D&D experience you want.
Well, yeah, because you want like your character should be a part of you. Like it should be like, or like a family member. That's basically what it should be, right?
Yeah.
And your group members should, like, I mean, unless they're chaotic evil and you're like lawful good, they probably shouldn't be family member. But I mean, most of your group should be like a part, like you're all connected in a way. And
well, see, and I would almost disagree with that, because even to me, in my eyes, even a chaotic evil character is in that party for a reason.
I agree. Yeah.
They're in there for maybe their own fucked
Yeah.
up shit that they want to do.
They need friends too.
I was saying, I was saying maybe your characters don't get along, but I mean, yeah, you personally would still feel something if their character died, right? Whether it be like a good feeling or a bad feeling, right? It could be both.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I mean. You should have you want your players to play the character, right? That they built, they created. They spent time on these characters, right? And you should respect that as a DM, I think. And
look, I'm not saying that they shouldn't face adversity. I'm not saying they shouldn't be challenged and they shouldn't come within. You kind of have to understand, and the DM's handbook is really good for this, right? Like, if it's a low XP situation, they should probably breeze through it a little bit. If it's a mid XP situation, they could be faced with some difficulty, but, if it's a high XP situation, they could face some really troublesome things. The fight could go terribly for them, and they can kind of bounce back from that. But if you're relentlessly pounding them, here's another problem I have. Not only just death every session, but if you are putting them up against a end of quest style, high XP, high risk, high reward, likeliness of death quest at the end of every single session or during every single session, you're doing it wrong, man.
Yeah.
D&D is about highs and lows. It's a mixtape. You cannot put on a banger every single fucking session, because they won't know anything any different. Like they'll never role play. They'll never experience the world it actually is. They're just fighting an ultra troll mega boss every single time, and that can be A, monotonous, B, it kills characters, and there's no creativity there. It's like, if you want to build up to a crescendo, you don't just want it to be crescendo like over and over again, right? Like, so
you want the
it goes
lulls.
hand in hand with death, right? You can't put them up against high challenge all the time, and you can't kill them all the time. Those are two no-nos.
I think that leads me to kind of a weird question that I feel like I'd be facing when I'm making quests, is that how do you know what's going to be, when I make a quest, how do I know, or how do I gauge how much experience to give for that kind of quest?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question.
I know, like, monsters in the monster manual have challenge ratings and then experience based on that challenge rating. The way I do it is usually if they kill a monster, they share that XP. But then I'll give them some XP if they killed it in an interesting way, they worked well together. If it was a fun encounter, give them a little extra experience. Yeah, if it's a big quest and like a big milestone or something, give them a nice bonus or something like that. Yeah, I mean,
XP is something that can be, you have to understand that there's multiple ways to run through a quest line, there's multiple ways to run through a session. So, if a troll's guarding a door, if they find a way around the troll, I'm still giving them XP for that. I'm not just, the only way to get XP isn't just by killing the troll, so give XP based on merit is what I mostly do. Sometimes I have a really fun little tidbit where I only give XP to players who get the kill. So when they're up against like 14 desert wasps, it's kind of like a competition to see who can down the most of them because they get 100 XP each, right?
Yeah.
XP is something that, is based on challenge rating. And so, but as a DM, I find that sometimes, like when they fight a zombie, even though a zombie is a challenge rating like 1 or 2, if they have a really hard time with that zombie, I might give them a little bit more XP for that. I might give them 50 more, 100 more, because sometimes zombies can bounce back every single fucking turn, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of decide. And organic encounters, non-combat, you can give experience as well. Don't forget about inspiration points. Don't forget about like other cool things you can hand out based on their class or their race or their background. It doesn't just have to be XP. You can also reward them with weapons, with cool gear, with really interesting magical items. Boons later on in D&D become a big thing, feats and stuff like that. So there's a lot of ways to reward. XP is one of them, and it definitely depends on the challenge rating and merit.
For sure. I would argue, this is from a player's perspective, so I might be a little bit swayed, but I would argue more XP is almost better. Not like an extreme amount, but like you want your players to grow. And I mean, at a certain point, 100 XP is not going to mean much, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so giving them a lot of XP at the beginning is not going to mean much in the long run, but it might allow them to level up a bit quicker to get a bit more of the skills that they want, which allows you to give them harder quests and stuff like that. That's just my perspective as a player. Personally, I like getting the quicker level up so that I can get to the harder quest lines and stuff like that.
Yeah, Josh and I touched on that earlier, where I've been playing D&D for a year, and I think the highest level I've been is level 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Oh shit, dude, that sucks.
We party wipe, or we complete the campaign. So I'm itching to play a quest or to play a campaign where I can maybe even freaking start at level 5. Like, I'm so over it. So I'm
prepare to get fucking hard, because I have players that are 18s, 19s, and 20s, and we're thinking about expanding past 20, and they've got like crazy epic weapons. It's a whole nother style of play when you're up at those levels, and they can actually take on real challenges, man, and they actually can do some pretty nasty shit. Like Glacial Meteor Storm, for example, is just one of those things, right? Yeah. Like they like playing with high level characters, nothing beats it as a DM. It's way more freeing. I can do pretty much any idea I've ever had for a quest line, I can run it now. And I love that, because the first 5 levels, your quest lines are pretty generic.
Yeah, you can only kill hobgoblins so often before you're like,
the shit opens up, man. It's pretty fucking wild.
Yeah, and I'm always surprised with how it works with the different DMs, because I know from like a gaming background, you can breeze through level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fairly quickly most of the time. And then I know for me as a player in D&D, I'm always like, why does it take me 8 sessions to get to level 3? Make it stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as a general rule of thumb for quest building, your character should reach level 1 by the end of the first session. And then they should probably reach level 2 by the second or third. Level 3 should probably be the third or fourth. And then you start to kind of get into the exponential growth, where they maybe have to grow a little bit slower. But throw in XP for good things that they did, for non-combat stuff, right? Yeah. Or for combat as well. And they should be able to grow pretty quickly.
All right. So we're going to move into, last week we talked about doing possible stories from our audience, and we get quite a bit of response. So we're going to read out one of the stories that we were sent. We'll read out this one. So
just curl up in your blanket and
curl
close
up.
your eyes and listen to this story.
If you hate mug of cocoa.
if you hate D&D stories, then
turn this off now.
I don't know why you're
Abort.
a DM, but so this one comes from @Puddle88 from Twitter. Puddle was he started off DMing. He created a single player dungeon crawl to get like into DMing, right? He was starting off trying to world build and learn how to build quests, so he started a small little dungeon crawl with a player. So he ran this with 2 players. So after the first encounter, they were fighting 2 zombies. The one decided to cut off the head and tie it to his belt with what hair they had remaining, and then referred it to his friend as Cuthbert for the rest of the game.
Man, come on.
Sorry.
You're not doing Puddle justice, man. Cuthbert's a dope name.
He proceeded to voice act both the character and Cuthbert, the severed head, throughout the dungeon, and having a 3-way conversation like that was one of the NPCs I placed in the dungeon, leaving me to act out the NPC confronting a madman talking to a severed head. He carried on this throughout the dungeon, speaking to it mid-fight and asking it for advice if he got stuck, and then giving himself the answer.
That's amazing.
That's really awesome.
I love that story. It's
Oh my god, that player deserves some major inspiration points. That is awesome.
he was telling me he has another friend that does shit like that, so he's gonna add a third player into this campaign, and he said he's super excited to see how that plays out.
That's awesome.
But that's
Dude, Puddle, you couldn't have gotten a fucking better first session, man, because cutting body parts off and attaching them to your belt is pretty much a staple of D&D. Because whether it's dicks, fingers, ears, heads, I've had player characters carry around pretty much every appendage you can think of on a fucking belt. So that's pretty much D&D, man. If you can handle that, you can handle anything, man.
I have a similar story to this, actually.
It's so
I just
good.
remembered now. This was my first campaign ever. One of the first sessions that I played in, I was playing a rogue, and he was a kleptomaniac, so he'd just take whatever he wants. Like, he would never do it just to keep it. Sometimes he would keep it. He might just give it as a gift to somebody. I said he'd sometimes just buries it because he's tired of carrying it around and doesn't want people to have. He doesn't want other people to have it.
okay.
So we were fighting gnolls, and I searched one of the gnolls and found a child's head in his backpack.
Oh God.
So yeah, I'll take that. And
As you do.
yeah, stick that in my backpack. Another player I think she was a school teacher.
She's
And
an orphanage owner.
an orphanage
God.
owner.
Yeah.
And in this quest, like, some knights came in, slaughtered all her orphans and took her captive, basically.
Oh shit.
So that happened in the past, and we're playing a little bit. We end up together, and we're going through a dungeon together. I ended up picking up this knight guy that I really liked. I hired him to hang out for a little bit. He ended up being one of the knights that slaughtered her orphans.
Oh shit.
So mid-dungeon crawl, she confronts him at the top of a staircase, and they get in a bit of an argument, and she shoves him, and then he tumbles down the stairs and ends up falling to the bottom and gets stabbed by like a bunch of skeletons or something like that.
God.
And dies. So my rogue, who's pretty annoyed, ends up slipping that child's head into her backpack. And that sat there for, I don't know how many, quite a while.
It was in
Multiple
her
sessions.
bag for like 6 sessions.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
It was the best wait of my entire life. To wait for that climax of when she pulled it out, and what happened was our DM made her roll to see like a dexterity or something. She ended up rolling low and dropped her backpack, so the head tumbled out onto the ground while a bunch of children were around looking at the
Oh my
heroes.
God.
It was the greatest play. It was so good.
That's hilarious. So that's a good link back to Puddle's story.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing, Puddle. If you guys want to share your stories, feel free to message us on Twitter at DiceyD20pod or Facebook with the same name. If you guys want to support us on Patreon, you can do that. DiceyD20 podcast. Other than that, I think we're good. If you guys have any,
Puddle, if you want to join my quest and campaign when it's all done up, message Josh.
I will not relay the message. So just want to say thanks to my DMs. Thank you, Amber, for joining us on this podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Maybe we'll have you out again sometime.
I don't want that.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you guys for listening.
I'm defined by my pussy, and have a good night.
Yeah. We'll try and get a more diverse cast next time.
Dude, this is as diverse as it gets, man. We love you guys. Thanks so much for listening. I'm not defined by my pussy, and I'll see you guys later.
Have a good night, guys.